College Baseball World Series Super Regional action starts tomorrow. The highest remaining seeds are number 3 Arkansas, number 4 Auburn, and number 5 North Carolina. The Oklahoma City Thunder have home court advantage in the NBA Final. Game 1 is tonight against Indiana. Stanley Cup Final in overtime. Edmonton beat Florida 4-3 last night to go up 1-0 in the best of 7. Save big when you bundle auto and home, renters, or condo with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
If there's one thing we know about dads, it's that they're not easy to shop for. Enter Kohl's. They've got everything from Nike golf gear to his favorite Levi's jeans. And you can save 20% on other finds like Flex Athleisure and Izod workwear. So if you're not sure what to get dad for Father's Day, you know where to go. Shop Kohl's now. Select styles. Offer ends June 15th. Some exclusions apply. Coupons do not apply to Nike and Levi's. See store at Kohls.com for details.
What was that? That is business phone bliss with the Ooma Cloud phone system. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very
calm. I am. Ooma has everything I need to handle the busy holiday season, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business comm at ooma.com/radio.
If you want to be an alpha,
you've got to get the winning edge.
It's kind of a necessary ingredient if you want to lead the pack. So mark your territory
with the winning edge.
You're in the big leagues. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Welcome to Football Full Circle right here on the SportsGrid Radio Network, Sirius Channel 159. Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens talking all things NFL, some news and notes around the league. Baltimore Ravens signed their wide receiver Rashad Bateman to a 3-year deal, $36.5 million. How does Rashad Bateman help that team moving forward? You look at the odds on FanDuel right now. Baltimore are 7-1 shot front runners to potentially win the Super Bowl championship. And when you think about it, in Super Bowl title for Lamar Jackson, Derrick Henry, a lot of optimism, more optimism potentially than Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills, and even Pat Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs. We know that Baltimore can run the football. We know that they can dominate in the regular season. But the biggest question mark surrounds this team is, can they do it as it relates in the passing attack with Lamar Jackson and now Rashad Bateman and Zay Flowers? That is the biggest question when you look at the Baltimore Ravens' big picture. If you're betting the 7-1 number, your hope is that Lamar Jackson and the passing attack can take over. Rashad Bateman did have glimpses. The consistency from week to week wasn't there, but he does warrant the 3-year, $36.5 million extension when you just look at statistics overall. And again, you know, this team has what it takes on paper, but can they live up to it in the postseason remains to be seen. When you look at just the title odds on FanDuel, Baltimore is 7-1 shot, followed by Buffalo and Josh Allen at plus 750, Kansas City right there at plus 750, and then the defending Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, which Ben and I have talked at length on in terms of just being able to dominate or potentially repeat. I think the Philadelphia Eagles have the best shot to do that, more so than what Kansas City's had in recent years. The defensive side of the ball is loaded. You look at those playmakers like Jordan Davis, Jalen Carter, and all of the secondary help that they have, Cooper DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell. From a defensive perspective, Philadelphia is as good as any team in the AFC and NFC respectively. Their offense is loaded as well with a Super Bowl MVP quarterback in Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts stepped up last year and dominated. And I think, Ben, when you just look at the top 4 teams, you know, I understand the optimism for the AFC, but I would still have Philadelphia maybe plus 650, even 5-1 over the Baltimore Ravens and Buffalo Bills.
Yeah, Joe, that's been the astounding thing in my perspective of these offseason odds around the National Football League, AFC and otherwise, but even now, as you bring in the reigning Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, who are now tied for the second best number with the Bills, with the Chiefs, but behind the Baltimore Ravens, again, part of it is perception. Part of it is also projection. You can't always use the past to determine the future. But when you look at true sample size in track record for both Baltimore and Buffalo, it is not even remotely close to either Philadelphia and certainly within the conference, the Chiefs in the AFC. And not just, hey, Baltimore hasn't been fully healthy when they've squared off against Patrick Mahomes, or the Bills have only had one shot and it was last year and they lost by a field goal in the closing seconds against Kansas City in Kansas City. These two teams, Joe, have had the opportunity in years past to slay that playoff dragon, to get past Patrick Mahomes in Kansas City, and have failed numerous times to do so, and have failed numerous times to change any of that playoff narrative. Now, I say all of that still with the anticipation of, hey, 2025 is a new year. It is a new season. We could be in completely different scenarios by the time we get to the early portion of January in the start of the 2025 postseason. I am well aware of all of that. Heck, if any of you, if Lacey, if Scott Wetzel, if anybody were to tell me this is the year the Buffalo Bills win the AFC, this is the season Lamar Jackson performs in the postseason and the Ravens win a Super Bowl, I would say, great. I hear it. I understand it. I can get behind it. But what I cannot get behind, Joe, is the idea that both Baltimore and Buffalo are priced in front of Kansas City in the AFC. And now the flock has a shorter number to win a Lombardi trophy than that of the reigning champion Philadelphia Eagles. That's what I can't get behind. You want to bet Baltimore at a 9-1 price where the Eagles are 6-1 and the Chiefs are plus 700. Great. You want to place Baltimore as a front runner ahead of those two teams? That's what really stands out to me.
Yeah, and we've talked about this, right, over the past couple of weeks. I actually think, Ben, and we could break it down, but the plus 750 price on Philadelphia, unless they start like we've seen Cincinnati, 0-3 or 0-2, they're not going to be a double-digit, number to win a Super Bowl championship. I don't care, even if they start 1-1, that number is not going to go to 9-1 or 10-1 respectively. It's only going to get shorter. So for me, right now in June, the 750 for the Eagles makes the most sense because, again, we know about consistency, all things going forward. Okay, maybe they'll struggle a little bit, but at the end of the day, you have the most dominant defense. You have a Super Bowl winning MVP quarterback. And oh, by the way, offensive player of the year at the running back position. That's enough to carry you to at least a 4-1 number by the end of September.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Joe. I think you're really onto something there. What is value, right? Well, what is perceived value? Is the team with now the second best price to win a Lombardi trophy only a $0.50 behind the front runners? Is that value? The Eagles are plus 750. They're not 75-1. But when you have the proven Super Bowl champions that are reloaded and restocked to make yet another run at it, clearly the cream of the crop in the NFC of not just reaching a championship game, but contending for a Lombardi trophy, and that team is now behind any team at all, but a team that does not have the proven track record of success in the postseason, to me, that is value. And Joe, you started off with the discussion of Rashad Bateman signing this offseason, that extension with the Baltimore Ravens. 3 years, a little bit more than $36 million. I have been a huge fan of Rashad Bateman the entirety of his NFL career, of course, dating back to his days with the Minnesota Golden Gophers. The story in his first 2 years in the National Football League, 21 and 22, health wasn't really out there, wasn't really healthy, mostly healthy in 2023, was a factor in the offense, but still not that go-to guy for Lamar Jackson. Last year, alongside Zay Flowers, that's where Bateman really started to shine. Career best, 756 receiving yards, and maybe more importantly, 9 receiving touchdowns. So he gets that second contract with the Ravens. Love the move for Bateman. Love the move for Baltimore. Love the move for Lamar Jackson, because our criticism often of the Ravens is not investing in the wide receiver or skill position department to obviously help out Lamar. Love all of that. But just because the offseason vibes are high in the Charm City, by no means would you find me placing the Baltimore Ravens as the lone favorites, the solo frontrunners to win a Lombardi trophy with what we have seen out of this group the last few postseasons and coming up short on those most significant of stages?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, too, offensive identity in those big spots. That's where you look at the last couple of years in terms of the loss to Buffalo last season, where obviously Andrews drops the critical, passes and drops to really give Buffalo the advantage. And then 2 years ago, where they failed to run the football when they had one of the most dominant rush offenses in all the AFC and the NFL, and they got away from that. So that you could have all the pieces, but if you don't have an offensive identity that is consistent in the playoffs, that is going to be a question mark that haunts you. And unfortunately for Lamar and Harbaugh, that is the question that they have to answer. And I'm with you. Can't buy it right now in June, Ben.
And, Joe, we have mentioned Buffalo, Kansas City. The Ravens faltering in those spots despite being favored to win both of those games against the Bills in the divisional round a season ago, and the Chiefs with home field advantage in the AFC Championship 2 years back. More on FFC next.
4 out of 5 scientists agree it's smarter to be on SportsGrid. And we're pretty sure that one scientist is still a virgin.
He just gives that vibe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. This update brought to you by Wendy's. On Wednesday, the Trump administration signaled that it intends to cut off federal funding for a long-delayed California high-speed rail project plagued by multi-billion-dollar cost overruns. Voters first authorized $10 billion in borrowed funds in 2008 to cover about a third of the estimated cost, with a promise that the train would be up and running by 2020. 5 years beyond that deadline, no tracks have been laid, and its estimated price tag has ballooned to over $100 billion. More than 400,000 Toyota cars are being recalled due to light failures that could impact visibility. The recall covers 443,500 cars with model years 2022 through 2025. The reverse lights on affected cars may fail over time due to moisture entering the light assemblies. If both lights fail, it could reduce visibility for the driver when backing up and fail to notify pedestrians and other vehicles that the car is reversing, increasing crash risk. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Progressive knows if you have to choose between everyday life and your RV wins.
What, are you going to take the RV to the mountains or go pick up your dry cleaning?
RV wins!
Are we cleaning the gutters or taking the RV camping?
RV wins!
Are we getting a new passport or cruising up the coast?
RV wins!
Don't forget, you got that trip to Sweden coming up.
Oh, yeah, passport, then RV.
With Progressive, you can bundle your RV with your home or auto and save with a discount and spend more time enjoying those savings in your RV. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states and situations.
When you partner with CDW, your people get more out of technology. CDW AI architects deliver Microsoft services to automate tasks and boost productivity, helping sales reps connect with more customers. Remote teams collaborate seamlessly, and small businesses compete at scale. That's amazing. Make amazing happen. Microsoft and CDW. Learn more at cdw.com/modernwork.
There's something you should know and always remember.
SportsGrid does not increase luck.
We're your unfair advantage for the latest sports gaming information. If you're looking for luck,
go find a horseshoe.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
It's the offseason in football, but here on FFC, there is so much to be discussed. We just talked about the Ravens having that offseason contract extension given to Rashad Bateman, and not because of Bateman, but just odds optimism. The Ravens, as we speak, a favorite at 7-1 to win Super Bowl 60, a $0.50 in front of Kansas City, Buffalo, and the reigning champs, the Philadelphia Eagles. Joe, we have heard from Saquon Barkley a lot this offseason. We discussed Barkley earlier this week as the new cover star of Madden 26, a record-setting year in his debut season with the Birds a season ago, of course, resulting in a Super Bowl trip and a Super Bowl championship with the Eagles as well. Sky-high expectations for Saquon and Philadelphia once again entering 2025. But Barkley was discussing this week his football future on the Greenlight podcast with Chris Long, a former Super Bowl champion of the Philadelphia Eagles as well. he was asked about his future in football. And Saquon Barkley basically saying he's not going to go on some grand retirement tour, whether it be next year, 2 years from now, 4 years from now. He's just going to wake up one day and understand when his football playing days are done. Basically saying, Joe, the announcement of his retirement is going to come out of nowhere.
Yeah, and sort of like Frank Ragnow the other day, where he just woke up and said, you know what, I just can't do it anymore. My body can't do the wear and tear and the workouts and obviously training camp, and I'm just checked out. I think, emotionally and mentally, that's where NFL players at an elite level realize that they can't play the way they can, and it's at that time, that's the writing on the wall. You retire from the game that you love. We saw it with Tom Brady. He played in a playoff game, and all of a sudden, that's it. He decided to check out. But when you look at Saquon, you're talking about a physical specimen. I heard, part of the interview as well. I also heard him say, he wants to be that pioneer with Derrick Henry to show that the older running backs are worth the value. And, Derrick Henry has done it better than anybody, where over 30 years old and still playing at an elite level, leading in the top 3 in terms of rushing yardage. That's what you want to see, and that shows that you're committed to the game. So whether it be, next year or a couple of years from now, he'll go out as one of the greatest running backs over the past 10 to 15 seasons, and we'll see if he could duplicate the 2,000-yard effort. For Philadelphia to be positive and be a Super Bowl champion, they just realistically need him in the area, I believe, of 1,500 yards, which with that offensive line, he should be able to do no problem this year.
We'll see when old Sasquatch calls it a career. Of course, he will leave his legend and his lore in the National Football League. As Lisi was alluding to, Derrick Henry earlier this offseason with the Ravens, signing a 2-year, $30 million contract extension. It's not quarterback money. It's not wide receiver money. It's not edge rusher money. But we have seen that resurgence at the running back spot. The extension for Derrick Henry, who is now 30 years old, was the largest extension we have ever seen, the richest contract given to a running back 30 years old or even deeper into their career. Saquon Barkley right now is 28. Of course, he turned 28 on the day of Super Bowl 59 and the victory over Kansas City out in New Orleans. So he'll be 29, near when the Eagles hope to be back playing in a Super Bowl out in Santa Clara. I did not take it, Joe, by any means. What Saquon Barkley had to say on the Green Light podcast was any indication it's his second to last year, his final season, or he is even thinking of calling it a career. You would expect, much like the physical freak that the king, Derrick Henry, is, the physical freak that is Saquon Barkley, who, of course, has dealt with his fair share of injuries throughout his NFL career, probably plays and does so at a high level, even at the age of 30 or beyond.
Yeah, I mean, again, his ability to catch the football as well, I think, goes a little under the radar and understated in terms of his athletic ability. You catch Saquon Barkley out in space, he is lethal. He could take it from point A to point B in a heartbeat and really change the complexity of a football game. And again, you talk about his vision, his cutback ability, durability. For the most part, yes, he has broken down when he was with the New York Giants. But again, talk about a workhorse. We think about Derrick Henry. The only other running back that you can give equal to in terms of carries and everything else is Saquon Barkley. I mean, he can carry it 25 to 30 times a game, take the ground and pound, and still move forward. And that's what you want to see. Again, is he worth the value? Absolutely. When you look at what he was able to do last year, Ben, and just elevating the locker room, elevating the offensive line. I mean, they bought in completely. It was a completely different rushing attack with Saquon Barkley as running back one, as opposed to DeAndre Swift and everybody else that they had a couple of years ago.
Barkley's rushing yards prop for 2025. What does he do for an encore in his second year in Philadelphia? 1450.5. That might seem like a discount. Saquon Barkley is one of 9 players ever in NFL history to rush for more than 2,000 yards in a season. One of those other 9 is Derrick Henry, who did so back in 2020 in Tennessee 2027. Derrick Henry led the NFL a season ago. His first in Baltimore in rushing touchdowns was 16. He had the second most rushing yards of his career, even Joe, at the age of 30 with 1,921. Derrick Henry's birthday, early January 4th, 1994, so he is 31. Saquon is 28. Both guys have been paid as of late, and both guys expected to do a ton for their squads once again entering 2025. I'm not sure we're going to see either guy, Joe, approach that Eric Dickerson record as Saquon Barkley did a season ago, but both, of course, going to be key components for these two teams with very lofty goals ahead in 2025.
Yeah, and when you think about Derrick Henry, too, for Baltimore, I mean, he is a player that just takes the game over. When Derrick Henry's rushing for over 100 yards, Baltimore's dominating football games, bottom line.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. We'll talk more about the Ravens, the Eagles in the big picture of Super Bowl 60 with the guy Joe mentioned as well, Frank Ragnow, calling it a career earlier this week for Detroit. His head coach, Dan Campbell, gives his thoughts up next.
There's smart.
And there's not smart.
Not smart is hope as a strategy. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Keep it here.
And win. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. The SportsGrid Radio Network presents This Date in Sports History.
1952, the first sporting event is televised nationally. Jersey Joe Walcott beats Ezra Charles in 15 rounds for the heavyweight boxing title.
Charles collapses like a sack of grain.
21 years later, in 1973, HBO premiered the heavyweight championship between George Foreman and Joe Frazier, as boxing became a closed-circuit and pay-per-view sport. For SportsGrid Radio, I'm Mike DeMurgis.
The Technology Minute with George Capalbo.
A new MIT ping pong robot plays with power and uncanny accuracy.
Try and handle this.
High-speed cameras and predictive trajectory computer hardware control a multi-jointed lightning-fast robot arm attached to one end of the ping pong table, precisely executing loops, drives, or chops. Intended to be used as a ping pong training aid, the ultimate goal, improving the speed and agility of humanoid search and rescue robots.
But that's not going to save you from my notebook backhand smash.
Follow me at Capalbo on X and stay tuned to the Technology Minute for more cool stuff like this.
Moneyline.
What are you more excited for? The NBA championship getting underway tomorrow or the NHL getting underway this evening?
It's got to be the NHL. It's going to be a more competitive series. The Indiana Pacers stand no chance at beating the Oklahoma City. Like, if they win one game, that's about all they're going to get. There's a reason why they're the fourth largest favorite heading into an NBA Finals in the last 40 years.
Catch Moneyline with Donnie Rightside and Kevin Walsh. Weekdays, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 Pacific on the SportsGrid Radio Network. There comes a point when the chips are down.
To coin a phrase.
When the only thing you can do is stop and wait. Do you want to face that moment prepared?
Or rely on luck?
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
As we were just discussing with Saquon Barkley, and as he shared, sometimes retirements in the National Football League can happen out of nowhere. Some further fallout from the big retirement earlier this week in the NFL. That would be Frank Ragnow, the longtime center of the Detroit Lions after 7 seasons because of pain and longstanding injury, calling it a career. Dan Campbell spoke about his center hanging up the cleats. And Joe, we also heard from Derek Carr this week, speaking with Front Office Sports on how his retirement and the decision behind it this offseason ended up playing out with the New Orleans Saints. First, let's hear what Dan Campbell had to say. Spoke on Frank Ragnow as he was holding back some emotion, saying, quote, he'll be missed, but also, what is that Dan Campbell mentality? But this train goes on, that next man up mentality. Of course, Frank Ragnow meant a lot to Dan Campbell, and in the way that Dan Campbell and others built up this Lions franchise to see levels of success they had not in 3 decades. The interior of that O-line, the offensive line as a whole, Joe, was a big reason why. There is no doubt that Dan Campbell individually in Detroit as a franchise is going to miss the services of Frank Ragnow this upcoming season.
Yeah, of course. And you think it's just about blue-collar mentality. Ragnow coming from Arkansas, great in terms of run blocking, really elevated the offensive line and gave them their offensive identity with David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. And Dan Campbell's rightfully upset, right? You have a locker room guy that the teammates loved, the anchor of the offensive line in terms of the center position. And now you have major question marks to fill, not just in terms of player personnel, but obviously the offensive philosophy. And we keep going back to this: new offensive coordinator, new defensive coordinator. Philadelphia, got through it for the first half of the season, and that's a main reason why they fell off a cliff at the end of the season, going 1-5 a couple of years ago and got knocked out by Tampa Bay. So if you're Dan Campbell, you have to answer, what is the offense? What does the defense look like? And on top of that, we have one of our best players that's no longer going to be there. How do we make up for that? And I said this to you earlier. I think it's a sell mentality until we see this team perform. When we talk about a bullseye on the back and we talk about, which teams are you going to back from the odds perspective, division, conference championship, to have a 5-1 number or a 7-1 number, to potentially win an NFC championship, just assuming that they're going to be a 14 or 15 win football team, is a huge ask with so many questions to be answered this coming season, Ben.
Yeah, no doubt about it, Joe Lisi. When you think about where things stand, I'm going to throw it back to you just ever so quickly, if I can. Having some technical issues with my earpiece. I'll be back in just a matter of moments. All right, Lisi guy, take it away, and then we'll get into Derek Carr in just a matter of seconds.
Yeah, just quickly talking about, Detroit and Dan Campbell and Frank Ragnow. We know that he retired unexpectedly. We talk about one of the most prolific rushing attacks in the NFC. And what does that mean for Detroit moving forward? I've talked about this with Scott. I've talked about this with Ben in terms of just big picture. When you look at the total 4 wins this year for the Detroit Lions, over 10.5 wins now is plus 105. Under the 10.5 wins has the juice at minus 125 due to the fact that now this team has major questions. We do not know what that offense and defense are going to look like. And I'll continue to say this in terms of the coordinators. People will push back and say it's a similar scheme. You have the passing coordinator, you have somebody that understands the defense, and you could run similar sets. That's true. But when we're talking about coordinators, offense and defense, you're seeing the game through a different set of eyes. And what I mean by that is you look at Brian Johnson, you look at not Brian Johnson, you look at Ben Johnson, and you look at the core. Help me out. The Aaron Glenn. There we go. I lost it. Aaron Glenn. You're seeing the game through a different set of eyes, and the coordinator might be more or less aggressive in certain situations than their predecessor. And that's where the lack of productivity comes and the lack of consistency. We don't know what the offense and defense will look like. So if we're talking 10.5, 11.5, you're talking about right now to make the playoffs, that's a huge aspect.
Yeah, it certainly is. So Frank Ragnow leaves behind a legacy in Detroit, but the Lions, with so many offseason changes they have to cipher through as they get ready for 2025. Of course, earlier in the offseason, a big change in New Orleans. Derek Carr retires. Who's that starting quarterback? We'll hear what Carr had to say next.
The winning edge.
You've got it.
But not everybody has it, because not everybody listens to us.
But we're working on that.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
Progressive presents the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders. College baseball best of 3 super regional games get underway this Friday in the Louisville Regional. It's Louisville taking on Miami. Corvallis Regional, number 8 Oregon State battles number 9 Florida State. Number 5 North Carolina is the host of the Chapel Hill Regional. They'll battle Arizona. Number 4 Auburn battles the number 13 Coastal Carolina Chants in the Auburn Super Regional. Los Angeles Super Regional, number 15 UCLA takes on Texas San Antonio. In the Durham Super Regional, Murray State takes on Duke. Baton Rouge, number 6 LSU against West Virginia. Fayetteville, Arkansas is the number 3 Razorbacks against number 14 Tennessee. The NBA Finals get underway tonight in Oklahoma City. The Thunder, the top seed in the West, taking on the 4th seed in the East, the Indiana Pacers. Save big when you bundle auto and home, renters, or condo with Progressive.
That's the SportsGrid Sports Flash. I'm Chuck Sanders.
If there's one thing we know about dads, it's that they're not easy to shop for. Enter Kohl's. They've got everything from Nike golf gear to his favorite Levi's jeans. And you can save 20% on other finds like Flex Athleisure and Izod workwear. So if you're not sure what to get dad for Father's Day, you know where to go. Shop Kohl's now. Select styles. Offer ends June 15th. Some exclusions apply. Coupons do not apply to Nike and Levi's. See store at Kohl's.com for details.
One of life's greatest mysteries has finally been solved.
Who let the dogs out? Spruce.
It's Spruce, the new hard-working, worry-free weed and grass killer that's safe for use around people and pets. When used as directed, spray the leaves for visible results in just 1 hour and dead weeds in just 1 day. You spray, they play. Weeds die by the next day. Find Spruce wherever weed killers are sold.
You're listening to Sports Grid.
Spreading the winning edge far and wide.
Terrestrial, internet, TV, satellite, and don't forget our mobile app.
Face it.
The winning edge is everywhere.
Somewhere there's a squirrel frustrated he can't get a phone.
This is the Sports Grid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
We have talked about retirements around the National Football League this offseason that have kind of come out of nowhere. Joe, back in early May, nearly a month ago, that was certainly the case when we got the announcement from Derek Carr that he was calling it a career, and he had announced his retirement from the New Orleans Saints. Derek Carr this week speaking with Front Office Sports, saying basically the decisions behind that retirement in dealing with the degenerative changes to his right throwing shoulder dating back to an injury he suffered not during the 2024 season, but in 2023. Carr had this to say, quote, "That part was tough because I didn't want to have surgery and just sit there, and it sounds crazy, but just take the Saints' money." So what Derek Carr was basically deciding between, Joe, have surgery to come back and you're not sure you're fully healthy or what the long-term injury effects are going to be on your most valuable part of your body as a quarterback, your right throwing arm, your right throwing shoulder. And if it did not work out and his future was still uncertain, I should say, up in the air, Derek Carr would be taking money and a large contract still needing to be paid out by the Saints for the final 2 years under his deal. He was signed under a contract with New Orleans through 2026. Obviously, as he retires, I'm sure there's some financials that still need to be owed to Derek Carr or however that is structured in his deal. But of course, he's no longer really on the books. So Derek Carr kind of giving some of the thoughts behind what led to the announcement in early May of his retirement from football.
Yeah, again, could Derek Carr play at the same level? We saw him, obviously, in terms of the injury where he's playing the New York Giants. He, sacrifices his body, leans and falls on the shoulder and elbow at the same time, and now he has issues, right? And only a guy and a quarterback knows if he could chuck it and sling it as quick and as good as he did previously, and that's a huge cause of concern. And if you are somewhat checked out at the end of his career, that's a decision that Derek Carr made, and you could say he made it for the benefit of the organization as well, because again, were they going to go and compete for an NFC championship with Derek Carr at the helm this year and a first-year head coach, Kellen Moore? Most likely not. They might have been a middle-of-the-road team and maybe, on a good day, they could have snuck into the playoffs, but not now. They're in a complete rebuild. So walk away from the game, free up some cap space, and allow the team and the first-year head coach to move on with a new quarterback that they hope will be Tyler Shuck or somebody else. But again, we're not talking about Derek Carr has a very good career. When you just look at it statistically, it's like, wow, this guy was good. But again, in terms of elevating and being a contender and challenging for an NFC championship, I don't think anybody would say Derek Carr is the guy that I want under center out of all the elite quarterbacks that are in the league.
There was a time, Joe, when he signed with New Orleans after being ousted from Las Vegas at the end of 2022. When he came to the Big Easy that offseason, they quickly became the favorites to win the NFC South, something the Saints never realized with Derek Carr as the starting quarterback. We'll talk about the future in the Big Easy, what we can expect this upcoming season under a rookie head coach in Kellen Moore, more than likely with a rookie starting quarterback in Tyler Shuck. But just to give further credence to Derek Carr trying to work through the entirety of this idea, he said, quote, "I wouldn't have been able to play if I had the surgery," basically putting his 2025 season out of the realm of possibility. And then he followed up by saying, "If I tried to play with it, I wasn't near 100%, so that doesn't help them either. I just felt like it was the right thing to do for myself and for the team." Of course, Kellen Moore has known Derek Carr for a long time. They used to square off against one another on the playing service. Kellen Moore, the quarterback for Boise State. Derek Carr, the quarterback for Fresno State, back in their Mountain West and collegiate playing days. And Kellen Moore was asked about Derek Carr earlier the offseason, how this process played out before Carr announced his retirement. Moore saying, quote, "He did everything he could as he's gone through this. He's communicated extremely well. He's worked really hard to put himself in position. And ultimately, this was the outcome." So you really can't fault Derek Carr, Joe, despite how this has played out for the Saints, and the idea that New Orleans is now fully in a rebuild with a rookie head coach, Kellen Moore, taking the reins in 2025.
Yeah, I think, again, you hit the nail on the head in just saying, again, Derek Carr had a major rehab ahead of him. And again, that's just to potentially get to where you're at and at least get on the football field. That being said, we don't know if he took a shot, whether there be any residual damage and if he was checked out mentally as well. So if you're not sure and you don't want to go through the rehab and the rehab is going to be too much, then you make the right decision and retire and allow the team to move forward and have a vision for the future. That's the best deal. Yeah. If you really care about the New Orleans Saints, you made the proper choice. Again, we've seen quarterbacks come back from injury and they don't look 100%. And you could throw Kirk Cousins and even Aaron Rodgers into that mix. And all of a sudden it's a wasted investment. And the team and the organization are in a setback for years now, trying to come out of it.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it, Joe. And you mentioned Derek Carr in the overall grandeur of his career. Of course, not many playoff berths in there with the Las Vegas or at the time the Oakland Raiders, but played in the modern era of the NFL. So the stats and the yardage will rank rather highly in NFL history. Carr, after 11 years, his first 9 with the Raiders, the last 2, of course, in New Orleans, threw for more than 41,200 yards. That's 22nd most all time in the history of the NFL. Who is 21st? That would be Kirk Cousins, who, of course, is dealing with his own injury issues and has his future in the National Football League very much uncertain at this moment. When you look up and down the top 20, top 25, most of the guys played within the last 2 to 3 decades. Only a few, Joe, really prior to that. Even John Elway, 1998, Dan Marino ending up before the year 2000. And then really even later than that, Warren Moon in 2000, Fran Tarkenton. Fran Tarkenton's the only guy in the top 15 that finished playing football prior to 1998. That's kind of crazy. Dan Fouts ranks 20th. He ended his playing career in 1987, of course, with the Chargers at more than 43,000 yards. So that's going to be the story, right, in terms of Hall of Fame consideration for a lot of these guys in the modern era. Their career stats, because of the passing game in the National Football League, are illustrious, But, of course, you weigh that with overall individual and more than likely team success.
Yeah, I can't right now. If you're asking me about Derek Carr, no way is he a Hall of Fame.
He's not a Hall of Famer.
No
I'm just saying, with a lot of the guys that are going to come through and put up the numbers and the stats alone don't tell the entire tale.
Right, of course. You have to translate that to team success. I think a couple of quarterbacks that you can make the argument. Obviously, Mahomes with 3 Super Bowls, no brainer. Joe Burrow, if he consists, and obviously Stafford, I think, is in the consideration as well with those type of statistics, and thinking about it, being a Super Bowl winner. But again, a lot of these guys, and we've seen a transition. Teams are going back to running the football, more ball control. So again, do the statistics over the next couple of years get dialed back? We'll see. But again, when you talk about Hall of Fame and you talk about greatness, it equates not just to team success titles, right? Because Dan Marino, yes, he's in the Hall of Fame, but at the end of the day, never won a Super Bowl. That's a huge, breaking point when you break down these Hall of Fame candidates, and we'll see how it plays out over the next 5 to 10 football seasons.
No doubt the 2 all-time active leading passers in the National Football League. At least we think one guy is active. That's Matthew Stafford with 59,809. That's 10th most all-time currently. Aaron Rodgers, 7th most all-time, 62,952. Now, Rodgers has yet to announce his retirement. We'll see what the rest of the offseason, of course, holds for Aaron Rodgers. Who is next up in New Orleans? Is it Tyler Shuck? We'll discuss next.
We're not saying every SportsGrid listener is a legend, but you might start thinking about who's going to play you in the movie. Just saying. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network.
With the SportsGrid News Flash, I'm Trey Westerberg. This update brought to you by Sky Rizzi. On Wednesday, the Trump administration signaled that it intends to cut off federal funding for a long-delayed California high-speed rail project plagued by multi-billion-dollar cost overruns. Voters first authorized $10 billion in borrowed funds in 2008 to cover about a third of the estimated cost, with a promise that the train would be up and running by 2020. 5 years beyond that deadline, no tracks have been laid, and its estimated price tag has ballooned to over $100 billion. More than 400,000 Toyota cars are being recalled due to light failures that could impact visibility. The recall covers 443,500 cars with model years 2022 through 2025. The reverse lights on affected cars may fail over time due to moisture entering the light assemblies. If both lights fail, it could reduce visibility for the driver when backing up and fail to notify pedestrians and other vehicles that the car is reversing, increasing crash risk. I'm Trey Westerberg with the SportsGrid News Flash.
Progressive knows when you're on your boat, you're already on vacation. And Vacation You forgets all your worries. Vacation You doesn't even keep track of time and knows that time is a meaningless construct designed to control us, man. But Regular You knows you don't want to be too far out in the water after the sun goes down because Vacation You doesn't know how to navigate in the dark yet. Vacation You and Regular You really need to get on the same page. So bundle your boat with your home or auto policy and earn an automatic discount from Progressive. And spend the savings on the both of you. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company affiliates and other insurers. Not available in all states or situations.
Ooma. What was that? That is business phone bliss with the Ooma cloud phone system. It handles all our voice, video, and messaging needs.
You sound very
calm. I am. Ooma has everything I need to handle the busy holiday season, like virtual receptionist, call routing, and video conferencing. And it starts at just $19.95 per month per user, plus taxes and fees.
Ooma.
Nice. Find your business comm at ooma.com/radio.
Remember when you were thankful you could just get AM and FM?
Things have progressed.
Now even an app on your phone can give you a 21st century thrill with that little drop of heaven called
the deposit notification.
This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle. So obviously back in May, Derek Carr announces his retirement. The Saints have had some time to figure out the plan in place at the quarterback spot. And Joe, courtesy of our Canadian friends at the FanDuel Sportsbook, they have posted some early lines for some potential quarterback battles that will play out this summer and this offseason. The odds-on favorite to be the Saints starting quarterback week number 1 in New Orleans, that is the rookie, although he's not exactly a young guy, Tyler Shuck at a minus 310 price. Shuck, who will turn 26 in September, is greater than a $3 minus money favorite, Joe, to be that starting quarterback for the Saints in week number 1. Of course, the other names in consideration, and in that QB room in the Big Easy, Spencer Rattler, Jake Haener. Joe, do you agree? Will Tyler Shuck be the starting quarterback for the Saints week number 1?
Yeah, I honestly believe that, and the reason why I say that is you have no reason not to start Tyler Shuck. You know what you're going to get out of Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener. Both players played last year. They didn't really show consistency. They didn't show the ability to elevate their team as it related to the passing attack. You can make the argument it was one of the worst passing attacks at the end of the regular season of any of the 32 teams in the NFL. And I understand there was a lack of talent and an interim staff, but at the end of the day, that quarterback room was terrible. And now you draft Tyler Shuck. Love him or hate him, he's a rookie. You want to see what you have from the get-go, and if Tyler Shuck is not the answer, you could always go back to Jake Haener or Spencer Rattler in a new scheme to see if you can catch lightning in a bottle, or you could play out for the number 1 draft pick, whether it be Arch Manning or Garrett Nussmeier or some other quarterback coming out of college. I mean, there is no room to try and force the square peg into the round hole with a major rebuild in New Orleans.
Yeah, and Joe, you mentioned it right there. We'll talk further about what the NFL draft in 2026 might hold and what those names might be down there in the Bayou in just a bit. But week number 1, the Saints will be at home in New Orleans. The head coaching debut for Kellen Moore, and more than likely the NFL career debut of Tyler Shuck. The Saints are already a 4.5-point home underdog against the Arizona Cardinals. New Orleans, Joe, the win total for the Saints this upcoming season is 5.5, and the under has the juice at minus 135. There are 5 teams around the NFL right now with a win total with the number at 5.5, but based on various levels of juice, we can compare who is expected to be the worst team in the NFL. 5.5, also the win total for the Giants and the Browns. Both of those teams juiced to the under. The Browns at minus 150, the Giants at minus 140 to the under, the Saints at minus 135. So the Browns expected to be the worst of the lot. We'll talk about Cleveland in just a couple of moments. Joe, like you, for me, it is Tyler Shuck. He needs to be your starting quarterback week number 1. You'll figure out what you have with the round 2 selection. If it doesn't work out, and I'm not sure it's going to be overly illustrious, Joe, as you have shared multiple times, you weren't exactly sold on the steam behind Tyler Shuck, who played 7 years of college football, first at Oregon, then Texas Tech, and of course this past season at Louisville. There's a lot to like, but is it going to replicate with success right away in the NFL? I think he'll be fine, mediocre. I don't think he's going to be a great starting quarterback in the NFL. And if the Saints, Joe, are in consideration for the worst record, one of the 3 worst records, depending on what the 2026 NFL draft class and the order looks like. Of course, we're talking about quarterbacks. We're talking about New Orleans. We're talking about the Bayou. We're talking about Louisiana. And the 2 best prices to go first overall in 2026, that's Arch Manning at plus 230, the New Orleans native, the grandson of Archie, who, of course, was that quarterback for the New Orleans Saints, one of the best QBs you could argue the Saints have had, maybe only behind Drew Brees. And who is another quarterback that currently plays in Louisiana that has that second best price to go first overall, Garrett Nussmeier at plus 360. That would be enough alone, Joe. Plays in Baton Rouge, making the quick trip to the Big Easy. But who's now the new OC in New Orleans under head coach Kellen Moore? That would be Garrett's father, Doug Nussmeier, as well.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. It's Arch, it's Garrett Nussmeier, number 1 and number 2 coming out of the draft right now. And if you're New Orleans, it can be like splitting hairs, right? I would think Arch is a bit more mobile, utilizing his legs. He could be utilized in the RPO game, a little bit durable. We saw him use that in Texas last year, multiple times scoring touchdowns. it's going to come down to, can both players live up to the bullseye on their back, right? Because there's a lot of pressure on both Arch Manning and Garrett Nussmeier, big picture. Arch is supposed to elevate Texas past to where Quinn Ewers got them in a loss in the college football semifinal to Ohio State. And for Garrett Nussmeier, he has the best weapons in college football from a passing perspective and wide receiver perspective. Now he has to actually make the college football playoff and elevate, and you can't just do it against the likes of UL Monroe and all of a sudden, Georgia Southern. You have to do it against the best teams in the conference, talking about Alabama, talking about obviously Florida where he struggled in the swamp. He has to elevate Texas A&M. You have a great first half and then fall off a cliff with 3 picks in the second half. That can't happen. If you're in New Orleans and you're looking at both of those players, they have to live up to the bill and put up the numbers in their senior season. If they don't, we might be talking about a defensive player potentially number 1 overall next year.
The shortest price for anybody not playing quarterback is Keldrick Falk. He is, of course, an edge rusher out of Auburn at a 19-1 price. I also, Joe, again, it's very, very early, right, to talk April of 2026 in the NFL draft. We have no idea what the order is going to be. But if we follow the odds, again, the 3 worst win totals around the NFL this year, Saints, Giants, Browns. You would think the Saints, despite drafting Tyler Shuck early in the second round, if this year is bad and they are in position to draft either Manning or Nussmeier, they would make that move. Would the Giants, with Jackson Dart being a first-round pick in 2025, maybe with a change in coaching staff? Would the Browns, with all the investment in Shedeur Sanders and Dylan Gabriel? Plenty more to come on Football Full Circle next.
Luck is winning the lottery. Strategy is settling your divorce before cashing in the ticket.
It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. SportsGrid TV and radio networks are the premier streaming video and audio channels dedicated to serving the sports wagering audience. Found on major smart TV platforms and streaming on SportsGrid Radio and Sirius XM Channel 159. SportsGrid's real-time data, expert commentary, and entertaining analysis transform viewers into informed sports enthusiasts. Our weekday radio lineup begins with the early line at 8 a.m. Eastern with Ben Stevens and Donnie Rightside. Donnie joins Kevin Walsh on Moneyline at 11 a.m. Eastern, followed by Football Full Circle at noon Eastern. Kaplan and crew join the party at 1 p.m. Eastern, and Pharrell Coast to Coast keeps things rolling from 3 to 6 p.m. Eastern. Get in the mix with Kevin Walsh and Game Time Decisions at 6 p.m. Eastern. Evenings simmer with Carver and Lisi, then boils over with Gabe Moritzi on Sports Rage Late Night at 10 p.m. Eastern. To find out where to find SportsGrid that's best for you, go to sportsgrid.com. It's smarter to be on SportsGrid.
Imagine combining the exciting investment opportunity of cryptocurrencies with the power of artificial intelligence to maximize your IRA, 401k, or other investment funds. Listen, if you're looking for ways to accelerate your retirement growth, Block Trust IRA has market-leading strategies and solutions for all levels of investors, from $1,000 to millions. And they partner with Bitcoin Magazine's #1 crypto trading fund in the world to maximize your returns. Plus, their team of IRA specialists is here to help you roll over your IRA or qualified retirement account to the new world of cryptocurrency investments. So make this free call right now to set up your account and learn more.
800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. 800-434-5313. That's 800-434-5313.
It's stark but true.
You can either listen to SportsGrid for strategies, odds, and more, or you can pay your bills by digging in your couch cushions for change.
Just be sure to wear gloves.
Get the winning edge. This is the SportsGrid Radio Network. You're listening to Football Full Circle with Joe Lisi and Ben Stevens.
Live right here on Football Full Circle, it is FFC. He is Joe Lisi. I am Ben Stevens. And Joe, some more news around the quarterback position in the National Football League. Shane Steichen telling reporters that for minicamp next week in Indianapolis, Anthony Richardson is not going to participate as he is dealing with a shoulder injury. On the show earlier this week, Scott Wetzel and I had the conversation around the news that C.J. Stroud has not really thrown at Texans voluntary OTAs. And despite the fact that Houston is saying it's no big deal, they're just being overly cautious. Both Scott and I were like, I don't know. It's early June. What's the reason for him to be dealing with a shoulder issue or shoulder soreness when he hasn't played in a football game since the middle of January? Joe, I would say with Anthony Richardson's track record and the fact he only played 4 games during his rookie year of 2023 because of a shoulder surgery and an injury that ended his rookie campaign very, very quickly, that is rather concerning stuff in Indianapolis that AR is not going to participate during Colts minicamp this following week.
Yeah, you're talking about a quarterback that really has to answer many questions, a quarterback that has struggled to stay on the football field for 17 games in a regular season, right? And now we saw him get pulled last year due to lack of inefficiency, due to lack of completion percentage, and now you add a shoulder injury into the mix where he's not making mandatory camp. That's a cause of concern for the whole team and the organization moving forward. Will it be Daniel Jones? The way he's looked and all the reports that I've heard, at least Daniel Jones looks consistent. Is Daniel Jones, an elite quarterback? Absolutely not. But is he a veteran, much like Sam Darnold was for Minnesota last year, that could at least be a plug-and-play type of guy, and you could get him for 17 games potentially? Yeah. And again, so this is now where the offense and the organization have to make a determination. Is he 100% healthy? Is he checked in, and can he elevate where he was last year? You're not going to go anywhere, Ben, with a starting quarterback in the NFL completing 8 of 31 passes for less than 100 yards and can't make a throw past the 10-yard out. I mean, that needs to change this season.
Yeah, I mean, Joe, it's bad, right? And I think you and I expressed some concern, perhaps even back in the draft cycle in 2023 when Anthony Richardson was getting all of the acclaim because of his athletic ability. The main concern was that in his full season as a starter and his only full season as a starter collegiately with the Florida Gators, his completion percentage was 53.8%. Accuracy, efficiency, completion percentage, not generally things, Joe, that improve at the next level, something that you can improve upon with the pace of the game in the National Football League. And it has turned out to, at least through his first 15 games over his first 2 seasons in the NFL, that worry has been proven correct. Last year, in the 11 games that Anthony Richardson played and started, a 47.7% completion percentage, 8 touchdowns to 12 interceptions. That is not good enough, Joe, to be a backup quarterback in the NFL, let alone a starting quarterback or the face of a franchise in Indianapolis. The 47.7% completion percentage, by far the worst in the National Football League of any qualified quarterback. The only completion percentage of any qualified quarterback in the NFL last year, sub 50%. The only completion percentage of any of the quarterbacks that started double-digit games, 10-plus, south of 60%. Again, Joe, there were already a ton of questions for Anthony Richardson and Indianapolis in that quarterback room entering 2025. The fact now that in early June, ahead of minicamp, Anthony Richardson is going to be out and not participate in camp, bad sign in Indianapolis.
It is, and we know that this is an organization that lost their owner and Jim Irsay that passed away, a couple of weeks ago, and obviously has major questions to get back to a playoff appearance. But if you're Shane Steichen and you're this team right now, about a month ago, the starting quarterback position was heavily in favor of AR, I think minus 400 or in that area, and Daniel Jones was plus 230 or 250 in that area. Maybe you could have gotten 280. He's plus 136 now, Ben. I mean, it's still a good bet with plus money.
And it's moving, Joe. It is moving like crazy because we were talking about Tyler Shuck at minus 310. I checked on Anthony Richardson's price, 10, 15 minutes ago, minus 250. That does it for football full circle. He's the mastermind of the pigskin, Joe Lisi. I'm Ben Stevens. Keep it tuned in to Sports Grid Radio.
You found the advantage for gaming, odds, and more. But we call it the winning edge.